We have a quorum. I apologize. My computer, sometimes when I try to get back on a meeting, it goes a little bonkers. That's what it did. So anyway, it is September 21st, 2021, Tuesday. The time is 4:03. I will open up this meeting of the Thompson Springs Special Fire District. Present are Commissioners Kevin Walker, Gabriel Wojtek, Jacques Hadler, Sarah Stock, Trish Hedin, Evan Clapper, Mary McGann. Staff, Chris Baird, Mallory Nassau, Quinn Hall, and at this point I do not see Christina Sloan. We will open up this meeting of the Thompson Springs Special Fire District. Its first order of business is citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard?
Mary, I don't believe anybody is on to give a comment for Thompson at this time.
Okay. Our next order of business is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion to approve the minutes for August 17th, 2021.
Motion by Gabriel Wojtek. Do I have a second? Seconded by Kevin Walker. Discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes? Raise your hand or say aye or both. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are now to approval of ratification of payment of bills.
Chair, I'd make a motion to approve Thompson Springs Fire District bills for September 21st, 2021. Total bills in the amount of $2,361.20. Total bills in the amount of $266.67. Total bills and payroll combined in the amount of $2,627.87.
Motion by Gabriel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jacques Hadler. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to, Mark contacted me and told me he would be unable to make it today, so I will read his report. On the August 25th, there was a breathing difficulty, 75 West Highway 6 and 50, Thompson. On September 4th, an allergic reaction on I-70, mile marker 207. 9/12, illegal trash burning left unattended, Harris Avenue, vagrant. Equipment, new pump for E21 ordered, UFDAG 50/50 matching grant. Training on 9/11, it was SCBA training. Others need to schedule 2021-22 Thompson Springs Special Fire District budget meeting. Continued request for fire EMS resources on the West Coast. Grand County Emergency Services LVFD meeting on 9/15 and Thompson Springs Community meeting at the fire station on 9/15. We are to how do we put it? Approval of approving additional compensation for fire chief for the fire response outside of the service area. Chris Baird.
Okay, so Mark responded to some of these wildland fires, and so the district can receive compensation for his time working on those fires. But it's up to us as the board of the district to relay that compensation to Mark. He's the guy that did the work. So I think that's, certainly the fair thing to do, and that's what I'm proposing. I believe Mallory sent out the list of the fires he was working on, and each of the costs associated with those that came in, or the revenue that came in associated with those fires. So I sent out a revised agenda summary, and I think should be good to go unless anybody has any questions. Madam
President or Chair, I'm not sure your title.
Chair.
I would move to approve the additional compensation for the fire chief received from the state for the fire response outside of the service area in the amount of $7,036.94.
Thank you, Evan. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mary.
Dean, any discussion?
I just, I wasn't seeing the receipt, and I just wanted to verify that that was all for labor costs and not any kind of equipment use.
I think I saw it, and it was in that same email.
Okay. I saw a receipt for a check, but it wasn't itemized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mallory, could you Mallory could forward on that screenshot that Mark sent me. I'm not exactly sure how they come up with reimbursement, whether it's hourly or what. I guess we'd have to wait for Mark to verify that. I'm not really sure. One thing I would say is that Mark is woefully underpaid, and we're going to need to raise his salary in order to have anybody. That's for sure.
Yeah, Mark is, I'll parrot Chris on this. He's severely underpaid, and, the discussions we've had, he basically never has a day off, right? Because he's always on call. So, I think this compensation is, but I agree with you, Evan, it'd be nice to have a breakdown. But I believe this compensation is sorely deserved.
Yeah, and I know that with how understaffed we are out there, it doesn't necessarily may not make the most sense to adopt this sort of model, but I know that EMS has been sending responders to different fires, and it's actually been of a bit of revenue generation for the district. And so if it makes sense for us to invest in some kind of truck or pump or something that might kind of aid in revenue generation, I'd be curious about that. But I realize that we don't really have the manpower to make this a super regular thing but I'm glad that he was able to contribute and help out, and it's been a wildfire season. So kudos to Mark for all that he does, especially helping out those in need.
Thank you, Evan. Any further?
Yeah, I assume that there was equipment involved too. This is a discretionary action by the board, and so you could take some portion of it out for equipment costs. I just don't know how that's calculated. And with Mark being unavailable, I don't know how to answer that question. But yeah, they do have some equipment needs, which we've been able to cover so far. New generator and some work on the truck. But like I say, I think that his compensation's been inadequate, just the same. And so part of this is not just compensating him, quite honestly, for work outside the district, but, it could be seen as just shoring up, the work that he's done otherwise. He actually responds quite a bit outside of his district to fires on the highway, 191 and I-70. They're also outside of his district. And he does that, off of his $500 a month or whatever he gets. So, I don't have a problem even giving him 100% of this just to get caught up, on compensation for him. But if we wanted to, we could deduct some percentage off also for equipment. But I'm
Well,
sure, you know, that the you know, that the main cost might have been water that they bought from the water district. I don't know. But I don't know where he got.
Full amount.
Yeah, I think keep the full amount would be my
I think-
recommendation.
I agree.
Any further discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor? Anyone opposed? No? Okay. We do not have any future considerations, and there is not a closed session. We've reached the end of our agenda, so if I have no one thinking otherwise, I will adjourn this meeting. Anyone opposed? Adjourned. We now move to our Grand County Commission regular meeting. Who was present for the Thompson Springs is also present for this one, plus Christina Sloan. Our first order of business is citizens to be heard. I know there's been a lot of talk about the Willow Springs Campground. If anybody's on to comment on the Willow Springs Campground, I recommend you wait until the public hearing later this evening. Mallory, do we have any, and keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes and state your name. Do we have anyone on for public comment? Mallory?
Mary, we have a few folks on. I believe that they're with special service districts or somehow part of the POTS mineral lease allocation. So if they are here to comment and not just observe, please unmute. Okay, Mary, I believe that they're just here to see how those agenda items go.
Okay. We are to approval of minutes. Approval of minutes for September 7th, 2021, and the special meeting, commission meeting or workshop, September 8th, 2001. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of September 7th, 2021, as well as the special workshop on September 8th, 2021.
Thank you, Jacques. Do I have a second? Second by Sarah. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. We are for ratification of payment of bills.
Chair, if I
Okay.
may,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve Grand County bills for September 21st, 2021. Total bills in the amount of $1,823,782.00. Total payroll in the amount of $252,829.61. And total bills and payroll combined in the amount of $2,076,611.63.
Motion by Gabriel. Do we have a second? Seconded by Kevin. Discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are to commission member disclosures. Is there a commission member that needs to disclose anything that is on this agenda? Okay, we are to general commission reports and future considerations. Evan.
Oh, let me get in there. Sorry, I was just looking for my notes. Let's see. On the 9th, I met with the Sand Flat Stewardship Committee, and we kind of reviewed the financials up to this point of the year. There was some talk about future kind of management of the road area and some possible bike trail slash campground connectors that would be more of like a road base, like a push a stroller, wheelchair sort of thing around the campgrounds that could also get some of the bikes using the Raptor route off the road, and just kind of how to go about applying for funding to get that up and running. It's a high functioning board, and those guys are doing great out there. I met with the cemetery district. Same thing. Folks are doing well. We had just kind of caught up on a lot of bills, and one thing of interest going on there is the land for the cemetery at Sunset Memorial was donated, for lack of a better term, from the BLM, kind of similar to the land out at Osta, and that predated the existence of the cemetery district, so that land was actually deeded to the city of Moab. And so just for liability and insurance reasons, if anything happens out there, it makes sense to have that deed in the cemetery district's name. And so we're hoping to work with the city to get that cleaned up, but you might hear some talk of that, kind of the big news out there. The Arches Special Service District, we're not able to get a quorum together for our September meeting, so that has been postponed until the regular scheduled meeting in October. This morning I had a meeting with the Emergency Medical Service Special Service District. We talked a lot about the funding allocations that we just went over in our last workshop. And we also revisited briefly some of the dispatch discussions that I think will kind of hint at some in this meeting as well. But things are good there. So that's all I have for tonight. Sorry, it was scattered.
No, you were busy. Trish. You're muted. There you go.
I think I'm on. Okay, thanks, Mary. On September 8th, I met with Chris and the Moab Valley Fire Department, talking a little bit about the annexation. Possibly the timeline that they put out is 2023, and just looking, at Thompson, the Lower Valley, Castle Valley, and we talked a little bit about budget, but it was pretty quick and just kind of putting out feelers. On September 8th, we had a Grand County Local Homeless Coordinating Committee. That is a really great committee, as Mary knows, and people are just really passionate about providing for that portion of our community. There are currently 32 homeless, 3 of them being children within our community. Coming up, Hasu has 5 units within the apartments at Arroyo Crossing that they're hoping to dedicate to homeless. On the 8th, we had a Thompson Springs Special Service District water meeting where we talked about grant writing, and I will state that that board is really going full bore with writing grants, which is awesome. We worked with the Holloways on possibly a resolution providing water to them for hydroelectric power. We looked at a pay evaluation for both the operator and the secretary, and then instituted a conflict of interest statute. So hopefully that is on board. On the 9th, we had a library board meeting. Those are wonderful because they're always just quick and to the point. It was kind of cool. They had some grant funding for Wi-Fi benches, which is really cool. And there will be one at the Moab Valley Multicultural Center, at the Free Health Clinic, and then at the library that will actually be disseminating free Wi-Fi. So that's pretty cool. We had a planning commission meeting, and unfortunately there was some miscommunication. So a few of us showed up at the commission chambers and got kicked out because there was another meeting. And so I wasn't there. They had a workshop for OAO And so I would actually highly recommend, I watched it and I know that I talked to Kevin about watching it. So I'd highly recommend that people watch that just to discuss or just to listen to what the general discussion was from the Planning Commission regarding that. On the 15th, there was a Thompson community meeting and it was great. John was there from Planning and Zoning, Bill Jackson, Bill Hulse, Orion Rogers. I'm trying to think who all was there. Evan from Solid Waste. And so everybody just was kind of going over the services that they provide, what we're trying to what we're trying to do in Thompson. Specifically regarding, eventually there has to be a replat because there's a portion of that community that is just not platted correctly, and possibly some rezoning out there. And then, the idea that Canyonland Special Service District, as far as solid waste, will be providing services out there if they can. And so it was just a great, providing information. I would say there was about 20 community members there, which is a pretty large part of that community. So it was great. And then lastly, yesterday I had a book Cliffs Highway meeting, and Sarah was also there. Currently, just the update on that really quick, and Sarah can always also speak to this if I don't get it exactly right, that the update from the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition is that they are now pursuing the EIS. And what I noted today on their website, they're now calling it the Utah Regional Connection Project. So they're ever changing the name, possibly to keep people slightly confused. I'm not sure. But that is for approximately $3 million expenditure to pursue that. And that's about it.
Thank you, Trish. You were busy as well. Sarah?
I also have a lot of meetings on this one. The Mosquito Abatement District had our meeting. I attended the Noxious Weed meeting, and there's a goat head gala, which is in full swing. They've collected over 100 pounds of goat heads. So the next few Saturdays, you can bring bags of goat heads to the Canyonlands Recycling Center. I attended the Moab Area Watershed Partnership meeting and the Long Range Planning and Emergency LPEC group, as well as flood management coordination, and not many updates from any of those that I think I should share. The FLAP grant presentation about King Creek that John gave, I attended, and I participated as a stakeholder in the Unified Transit Plan for Moab and Spanish Valley. That is it.
Thank you. Thank you. Jacques?
Great. Sounds like everyone's been super busy this period. I attended the Motorized Trails Committee meeting on the 9th, and most of what we talked about was the Sustainable Trails promotion, wording on giveaways to water bottles in the Trail Ambassador program. I also attended the same Unified Transportation Master Plan stakeholder discussion as Sarah, as well as the FLAP grant meeting that John Gunther put on the King Creek Road and potential bike path. I attended a trail mix meeting as well, where we also talked about sustainable trail promotion. I attended the Museum of Moab monthly meeting. I also had a meeting with August Granith about his new role at the Travel Council. And I did the Rec Special Service District meeting, where we mostly talked about budgeting and financials there at the district. And that's it.
Thank you, Jacques. Gabriel?
Yeah, so I also attended that FLAP grant meeting, as did Commissioners Hadler and Stock. I sat in on the Moab Area Watershed Partnership meeting with Commissioner Stock. I like that meeting, and if my schedule allows me, it's a good one to stay up to date with. I had a UAC, Utah Association of Counties board meeting last week. It was mostly housekeeping, audits, and the like. Nothing really pertinent to update for this board. Economic Development Advisory Board. That's the board that's formed to with the purpose of administering the Rural County Grant Program. We're firming up and finalizing the grant proposal for Part A. That's for $200,000. Also, just starting to brainstorm on potential proposals that might be made for the Part B, which is a competitive second part of that grant program. Also, we started a discussion about potentially streamlining EDAB, the Economic Development Advisory Board, with EDAC, the Economic Diversification Advisory Council, and potentially just streamlining those two boards has become a topic of discussion now. I met with Commissioner Stock and Walker to do some to offer some potential revisions for our strategic planning documents, and that's all I have to update right now.
Thank you. Kevin?
Let's see, there was a budget advisory board meeting and a steering committee for the general plan meeting, the meeting Gabe just mentioned. But the two things I want to emphasize are, one, the county redistricting portal now has the real live 2020 census data. So now will be a good time for any interested member of the general public to get in there, play around, maybe draw your own district maps. And I actually urge all of you commissioners to create at least one map. I think, later this year, we're going to have to be deciding on what we think a better map is. And I think actually having to draw one gives you some insight about, things that are and are not possible, keeping populations the same, et cetera. So I won't, sort of like assigning homework, but I didn't want to be so bold to do that, but I strongly encourage that. And then I think also maybe we could plan on getting an agenda for our next meeting. We should probably set a schedule for when we're going to, assess the various maps that people have submitted and make a decision. So I think, we've left the timeline a little loose for now because we didn't know exactly when the data was going to be arriving, but now those scheduling uncertainties are gone. And last, as of this morning, we finally have the landing page and survey for the public lands bill process. This is something we discussed in our meeting, I think it was a month ago, maybe a little bit more, but we approved a tentative rough outline for the proposal, and we decided we wanted to gather public input and do that via website. And we've now done that. There's also a dedicated email address for people who prefer just to see an email. I want to emphasize that this is just the first of multiple rounds of public comment. There will be other chances, and in particular, there'll be chances once we have some more detailed options or proposals to consider. So this is just the first round, but still, I encourage anyone in the public who's interested in public lands to have a look and maybe send us your thoughts. And if someone listening to this is a reporter, it would be a great thing to put in your article, a link. And the link, if you just go to the county webpage, along the top, there's a prominent link. So that's the best way to find it. Just go to grandcountyutah.net. And hopefully we'll also have a link to the redistricting portal there as well very soon. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kevin, is there currently a place to find that mapping exercise you were talking about?
Yeah, it's portal.u. Actually, let me make sure. Yeah, portal.utah-mapping.org. And I will email that. Okay, I can do that. And it occurred to me when we were setting this up for the public lands page that we should have had a link on the county webpage a long time ago. So that will be fixed soon. I also want to thank Mallory for helping me get the public lands bill on the webpage. So that was very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I experimented with that map before the new census came out. It's pretty interesting and it is hard. I found it not as easy as you would think to balance the population. So I attended the airport board Zoom meeting. My connection was pretty poor, so I missed some of it. But I basically, they were working really hard. They're revisiting their bylaws and things such as that nature. And there was a lot of good discussion. And it was a well-run meeting. There was Travel Council, the first time as August Grant as director or head of the Travel Council, or now I guess the Economic Development Department. And there was a lot of discussion on the budget. Chris came to the meeting and explained a lot of the uses of the TRT, what they can be used for, what they can't be used for, the percentages that go to different things. And they're going to schedule a workshop to really go through the budget and figure out what their recommendations would be. Jason Taylor was elected as chair to replace Howard. I attended the UAC, Utah State Association's conference on the 15th and the 16th in Midway. It was lots of stuff, so I'm not going to, and a lot of the things are going to send the presentations, and I will send them and share them with you. Many of them were worth looking at. I'm just going to talk about a couple things that I think was very interesting. They talked about forestry and the forest fires, and how they're discovering it's really important to be strategic in how we care for our forests. We went for a long time where we tried to put out all fires, and our forests thus have not become as healthy as they should be, because our indigenous people many times worked really hard and did control burns and such to maintain their forests, to keep it safe around where they were living. So, you know, he really wants to get the word out that if you hear of some type of removal of trees and such, to really investigate it before you jump on a bandwagon that all of this work is against the environment. So that was talked about, and he made a really good case. There was a presentation by Jamie Bracken. I bet you know her, Christina, from Summit County, talking about land use and just zoning and the state legislators. And she was amazing. And the problems and the difficulties of assured and affordable housing. I'm thinking when it gets close to the legislative session, it would be good for us to meet with Summit County and with her, and maybe we can partner on some of the bills and such that will come up that will attempt to take away some of our rights. She did talk about the problem that our state legislator are overbalanced with developers and real estate people. And that's part of the problem we face in trying to maintain our zoning rights and such as that. That was really good. Dominion, I made touch base with them about looking into partnering with Sitla to do some solar farms in our county. I will follow up on that. And and the Health and Human Services discussed how the way that they've restructured Health and Human Services over the mental health and how they're hoping that that will improve and streamline conditions. I left at noon just because I did not want to be driving in the dark. Okay, and we had a solid waste special service district. Anyone who likes to get seeds of native plants, there's going to be a seed exchange this coming Saturday from 10 to 12 at the Recycle Center. And there was a lot of discussion on getting more involved with our events, both in the city and the county, as far as increasing the presence of recycling and making it part of the event permitting process to advocate and push for recycling and the use of less damaging types of paper plates, or not using styrofoam, so I am going to follow up on that and see if we can do something to improve our recycling at our events, and we're going to work closely with the city to do that too. The other thing I thought would be really good is, maybe some of you remember that in Evan's presentation, he said that we only have 11.3% diversion rate, while the nation is above 30%. So we're really low. I would like, I'm going to work with, and hopefully I'll, if anybody would like to help me with it, I think we should do a resolution where we set a goal and start to really work diligently on increasing our diversion rate. And Chris Baird taught me this well, is if you don't put in a goal out there and you don't set it as a priority, it will just float around and nothing will happen. So I think that's really important to look at increasing it, because that's embarrassing that we're at 11% when the nation is above 30. There will be vouchers, free vouchers for the Moab landfill. You can get them online. They'll be available, I think, this Thursday, and the free vouchers are from October 24th through November 6th. That's all I have to report. Christina texts me and says she does not have anything to report.
I will, though, Mary, weigh in on Jamie real fast, just so the commission's aware. She is amazing, and I work with her very closely. She's actually the chair of the legislative committee on civil issues for the county attorney group statewide. So she's very involved in everything I did in the general session that I presented to you. She's really wonderful. She also is the attorney that UAC supported kicking off the land use task force in favor of replacing her with a developer, because Summit got crosswise over all that annexation stuff. So that was very controversial, and UAC's role was very poorly executed in a lot of people's opinions. So that is Jamie, and she is really great. I've been following some affordable housing bills through the year that they've been working on an interim session, and then also just prepping for the general session. But I will say, interestingly, all the county attorneys and counties are really interested in our high density housing ordinance. And I'm going to be presenting on that at our civil conference in October. And so, a lot of the bills are working on subsidies and set-asides for affordable housing versus, this private mechanism that we came up with that people are also really interested in hearing about. Thanks.
Thank you. I want to follow up on what you said too. I kind of kept it out of my presentation, but I think, and we did decide to stay in the UAC, and I think it's important, and I don't think we should let go of it. But I do want to give some feedback that they had at least one presentation that was so partisan, and that's putting it extremely mellow. It was a person named William Perry Pendley. Look him up. I had to get up and walk out. I mean, it was out and out bashing and bad mouthing any elected official who was not Republican, going back as far as Carter. So that was just disappointing. You know, and I went out and I says, I thought this was supposed to be a bipartisan organization, that you represent all counties, but this looks like you just represent the very conservative counties. So I was disappointed. So any other elected officials? Chris and Mallory.
Thank you, Mary. So I've just been mostly working on budgeting stuff, both for these district allocations and the county also. And besides that, we've got a lot of government records requests and appeals that I've been working on, and so that's actually taken up quite a bit of time this week. But other than that, that's all I have. Turn it over to Mallory.
Chris, I'm curious, these records requests, are they from news organizations or just sort of amateur internet sleuths?
News organizations.
Okay. And then the appeals are when they ask for something that they're not allowed to have and they appeal it? Or?
That's right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mallory.
Okay, I will keep mine short and sweet. The one thing that I've been working on quite a bit, as has Renee, is the compensation study. Many hours put into that. For some folks, or at least for their positions, we have quite a bit of data, whereas other departments, it's a lot of research and making sure that job titles are matching, duties are matching. So that's been a lot. Let's see. The other thing I will share isn't really work that I did, but in Chris's absence, I submitted the American Rescue Plan Act Local Assistance Matching Grant Program request for the Moab Area Community Land Trust. And it was a group of folks that put that all together, and I just got the pleasure of plugging and chugging and meeting the character limits. So that's all that I have right now.
Chair, you're muted.
No, I guess you didn't hear anything I just said. Our department report is from our technology department, Matt Sinceros.
Hi, everybody. You can hear me okay? Thank you. Like Mallory alluded to, try to keep things short and sweet here. I did include a written report. You'll see that in your packet there. Hopefully you took a moment to look it over. There's a lot of words. I try not to get overly technical about stuff. But I do welcome the new commissioners on this year that haven't had the pleasure of seeing one of my reports before. I try not to get into these big flowery PowerPoint presentations and otherwise. Last year, I kind of referred to myself as the man behind the curtain, right? Just the Wizard of Oz. There's a lot of things that happen in the background here that I take care of to keep things ticking along here, and those are all itemized and somewhat bulleted through the department overview there. I will state the mission statement that I came out with when I did my original strategic plan when I came on board here at the end of 2009. And that's the Grant County Information Technology Services provide reliable, robust, and integrated technology which improve the ability of the county to serve its constituency. I really try to work towards that goal on a day-to-day basis. And there's, like I said, there's a number of things there that I take care of here. It's not just desktops and servers and whatnot, but all the pieces that kind of go unnoticed in the backgrounds too, all the peripherals and connections, conferencing, consulting, project management, programming, access permissions, controls, and not to mention cybersecurity that goes into all this as well too. in the update there, this is really not a whole lot different than the report that I gave last year, due to the fact that I've been short-staffed again this year. It's just been me. If you haven't heard my story, I've been here for the end of 2009. And that entire time it's been me. Was approved for getting an assistant a couple of years ago. I had one for 2020, which was helpful during COVID, and allowed me to be able to focus on some big projects with 911 and some other stuff. But I've since lost that position. I haven't been able to recruit for it. Well, I shouldn't say that. Recruitment's been difficult for it, let's put it that way. That being said, within the last week here, did have a couple of pretty decent applicants, so hopefully we'll see that filled here shortly. But all that being said, it's mostly status quo from what it was last year. Just going through a lot of help desk type stuff. I'm having to be the boots on the ground. We've expanded some surveillance, adding camera systems, upgrading stuff here and there. I've been working back and forth with ISACs. There's a couple of different ones. There's a multi-state ISAC, and there's also a election infrastructure ISAC. And these are information sharing analysis centers that ingest in real time aggregate data from all sorts of different places. And they're able to monitor and control zero-day threats and be able to push out remediations for that as they come available. So it's been a nice thing to be able to work with. And it's been something that with COVID money and federal money has been able to afford to the states and to local municipalities like us at zero cost. So it's a good thing to be able to take advantage of those. And then I've been working on enabling all of this fun remote hybrid meetings and all that goes along with that. I did note a few different projects that I am working on. The big one that I've been working on this year is upgrading all of our core networking and systems here. They're in need of replacement for a few different reasons. One being age, another one's being compliance, and then the third is just overall performance. As I've gone through and looked at these solutions, and the solutions have morphed quite a bit here with the way that cybersecurity has really taken a kind of a hard right turn in a lot of cases in my world. We want to be able to step into a technology that we're going to be able to realize the best return on our investment while keeping the best performance and best solution in place. That being said, the project I did earmark last year at $25,000. I was hoping it was going to be able to come in under that, but the way that this is morphed and with the extra reportings and otherwise it's coming in, I think it's going to come in probably at least double, if not a little bit more than that. But we'll talk about that when my budget time comes up. Hopefully it's going to be pretty close and coincidental in time with availability too, because part of what I'm dealing with is a worldwide shortage with electronic parts, chip manufacturers, and otherwise. It's not been a pretty picture in a lot of those regards. There's some big spends are going to be coming up here in the near future in regards to replacing some of the other core servers, as well as some of the back-end hardware, which isn't networking. It's more actual servers and applications that are required to run the back end. I've had these things running for about 10 years now, 24 hours a day, and they're keeping up, but things are changing. And so there's going to be some of those pieces coming up in the near future as well. For the new members here, we're on Google, as you know, for our email, but it's also the G Suite. So it also includes all of Google's products there. We've been able to take advantage of the state cooperative purchasing pricing on that. That's good through the end of this year, and I plan to renew that this year as well. So we were able to take care of that pricing, but Google is going to be, or has migrated to Google Workspace, which is different than G Suite in some regards. G Suite to them is actually considered a legacy product now. And part and parcel with that too is there's going to be a cost increase with that too. But in moving to that, I think it was a wise move to move to Google pre-COVID. It's really been able to allow the mobile workforce to be able to jump and run and be able to stay agile in that regard and be able to be collaborative. Short of that, just security, and I just want to have a big shout out to all of the users across Grand County, all the boards and everybody else. I really appreciate your steadfastness with being wary as you're online, making sure that you're not clicking on funny links, not going to weird websites, don't fall in for various scams and schemes. All of those things coordinate to put together what we refer to in a service security world as our attack surface. Basically all of the points that an attacker could possibly be able to get into it. Over the last few years, even pre-COVID and even more so after COVID, we're still in COVID, I guess, but is the social engineered part of things. And that's where you actively have a malicious actor on the other end of that phishing email or that odd phone call or otherwise. And they're gaining information about the organization and finding out ways that they can ultimately infiltrate. So our staff and our humanoids that are behind our computers are definitely our first line of defense. And I really appreciate everybody. It makes my job that much easier when I can trust that people are being smart while they're being out online. That being said, like I said, short and sweet. I know there's a lot of bullet points. There's a bunch of things I could go on about. But I'd be happy to entertain any questions if anybody has anything, or if you'd like some clarity on anything that's in that report there. I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. And thank you for your hard work. And I hope one of those people that have applied for the job work out.
Me too.
Is it the salary that they leave for, or is it cost of living in Moab, or is it all of the above?
It's all of the above. The position that I'm advertising for is an IT support tech. It's very much an entry level type of a position. I'm looking for somebody who's tech savvy and somewhat familiar, that's able to take some instruction. Be able to show up to work is a big part of it. But yeah, that job's a grade 7, so it starts roughly about $20 an hour. It is a full-time position with benefits, so it's not a bad job. But the ones that have been qualified to be able to, or willing rather, if they're not here already, it's been impossible for them to even get here and find housing, let alone be able to be on that type of salary, unless the circumstances for them are right. And when we're competing with things like McDonald's paying 18 to 20 plus an hour, it's been hard. So yeah, it's all of the above.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I would. I guess mine's more of a comment than a question. I know that, as you just covered, Matt, you got a lot of different irons in the fire, and we're going to hear from our new emergency manager here shortly after you, and then later on the agenda we have a contract to improve some dispatch training. And you had presented to us before about upgrades to the 911 system and radios in the county and stuff. And I just would say, going hand in hand with that, I think some of the technology in terms of tracking 911 calls and dispatch response and stuff that it might be appropriate when those are getting upgraded that those two kind of things go hand in hand. And I don't know how much of a role you play in the software that accompanies the hardware, but I think that there's been some frustrations from different agencies that use those services, and I just want to kind of put that on your radar, because I know the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and you got a lot dealing with, and that's one thing that could use some updating.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The squeak wheel always does get the grease first. And to answer or to address your comment, absolutely, definitely involved in those conversations. We're going to actually we have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with Jenny Swenson and EMS and whatnot to talk about some different solutions about tracking some of those things in regards to call times and whatnot. The 911 system that we upgraded to, it does have some different abilities further beyond what our old system was capable of. There's a lot of things you can plug into that. So yeah, there's definitely that part of it. One other part that I'll bring up here too is that a few years ago I did start what I termed as a Grand County Communications Task Force. And that was to include stakeholders for our various dispatched agencies. And in regards to, not only the radio communications, but making sure that the 911 project at the time, which has since been completed, was up to date, and making sure that we're taking care of our neighbors too, as far as our neighboring counties, when we start talking about interoperability and some of those other things. So yeah, definitely I talk with the Sheriff's Office Emergency Management almost every day.
Great. I know you do a lot. Thanks for it all.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to do it.
I had a question. I noticed in the packet in your list of upcoming projects, one of them was a website overhaul, and I was just curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I just got a text from Jenny that we're doing a task force meeting on October 5th. So we'll be talking about some of those things then too. But as far as a website redesign, we are overdue for a website redesign. Currently, the website that we have is hosted and ran by a company called Civic Plus. It's a content management system that allows for partitioning and permissions so that each particular department and otherwise are able to get in, update their sections of the website, while maintaining an overall look and feel and functionality of the entire site without having to be some sort of a web designer. With that agreement, every 4 years, I believe that we're eligible for what they call a website refresh. It's not a total redesign, but it's a refresh. It puts in any of their new features and things that are there. It doesn't really change the navigation, but changes kind of the look, the feel. We upgrade photos, backgrounds, mega menus, texts, that kind of stuff. This one, when I talk about website, I really want to have engaged stakeholders, and with the combination of me having to divert my attention constantly to the day-to-day, and then some of the staff turnover that we've had here over the last year has continually kind of put that project on a back burner. But that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. It's more of a refresh as opposed to a total straight out redesign. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It wasn't clear to me whether, so you're not switching from Civic Plus to some other content management system. You're just doing a refresh within Civic Plus.
Yeah. At the time, we're not looking at moving. We certainly, it wouldn't hurt to go and take another look at some of the different vendors that are out there. There are some new players in the market that specialize in government websites. Civic Plus, at the time when we first moved to them, they were one of the larger players, more experienced, that has, and they specialize in government websites, civic engagement and that type of thing. There are a few different players that are in that space now too, that it might behoove us to take a look at. Yeah, that is definitely part of it. We'll make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck there, while, like I say, keeping performance and security and everything under control.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you, Matt. Thank you for your hard work and the update.
Yep.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
guys.
much.
Have a good night.
We are now hearing for an agency emergency manager introduction and update. Jennifer Swenson, emergency manager and dispatch.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jenny Swenson. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for about 13 years. 13 years exactly, actually, this month. I started out as a dispatcher and took over as the dispatch supervisor approximately 6 years ago. About a year ago, when Rick Bailey retired, I was kind of put in as the emergency manager since I had expressed an interest in it before. And since then, I've kind of just been trying to make sense of everything. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read my update that I submitted back in June, I believe. If not, let me know, and I'm happy to send that to you when I'm done here. But just as an update for August and September, we did submit all of our documentation to the state of Utah for our emergency declaration for the flooding. All the information was compiled, all the preliminary disaster assessments and photographs were submitted to the state. However, the state threshold was not met. UDOT's bid came in considerably lower than what they were anticipating. So we are not eligible for FEMA funding to help with the cleanup coordination. So we're still going to work with NRCS, and it's been suggested that we enlist the help of Team Rubicon to see if maybe they'll be willing to help us out with some of the cleanup. I know that County Roads has also put in for a grant to help with the funding to replace the culvert on Stocks Drive. So we're moving along swimmingly with those things. We were awarded the SHSP, the State Homeland Security Program grant. We've been planning on using that for some cybersecurity measures. I've been in contact with Matt about that, as well as putting in some additional metal detection in the courthouse and working on the radio system, on the radios for our law enforcement, moving towards the 800 system. We are also moving forward with the Colorado radio equipment. I'm not sure how much Rick kept everybody involved on that, but we've been in talks with Mesa County to try and put an antenna over here to make it so that our dispatch can talk to Mesa County, Colorado. As of right now, some of the Colorado deputies do have our law enforcement frequencies programmed on their radios, which has been phenomenal in multi-agency efforts when we're going across state lines. And in putting in this equipment, it will enable dispatch to have a direct line to their dispatch, so that we're not having to talk on the phone, so dispatch isn't having to talk on the phone with them. We did just hold our Grand County LEPC quarterly meeting with a presentation by Richard Mosley from the State Marshal's Department. We've been busy distributing PPE again to those who need it. And I've been coordinating with Team Rubicon to come back in March of 2022 to do their Operation Slick Rock and hopefully help with some of the Pack Creek cleanup at that point. So that is all I have in a very quick nutshell, if anybody has any questions.
Mary, I think you're muted. Does anyone have any questions?
I'll just be the broken record and thank you on your work with the dispatch and kind of working with all the agencies that rely on that service, and encourage you to keep working towards improving that. And hopefully the grade increase from our last meeting helps with some of your retention and staffing needs as well.
Absolutely. I think it already has. We've had several new applicants just in the last couple of days. So I think it'll be a good thing.
Good. Anyone else? Okay, well, I hope we can get Team Rubicon to come back. They were incredibly helpful after the last fire. I don't know, have you been coordinating at all with San Juan County with Team Rubicon? Because I've mentioned it to them as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tammy Gallegos, their emergency manager, has been in contact with them as well.
Good, good. Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. We are to general business and action items. The first item of business is adopting resolution allocating mineral lease funds and state help received by the state of Utah during calendar year 2022 to eligible special service districts and or to the school district. Chris Baird.
Okay, thank you, Mary. So as per our workshop, I sent you some updated resolutions, and I'll just go over the meat of those now. For the Utah Department of Finance appropriated mineral lease, I've got down 23% to go to the Recreation Special Service District, 57% to go toward the Transportation Special Service District, 10% to go towards Solid Waste Management Special Service District, and 10% to go to the Grand County School District. And then for the DWS appropriated mineral lease, I have 65% to go to Recreation Special Service District and 35% to Solid Waste Management Special Service District. Then for the state payment in lieu of taxes, I have 50% to go toward Emergency Medical Services Special Service District, 30% to go toward Recreation Special Service District, and 20% to go toward the Grand County School District. And I believe that's as per our workshop.
Questions? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
If I may,
Yes, thank you, Jacques.
I move to adopt the resolution of the Grand County Commission allocating mineral lease funds and state PILT allocated during calendar year 2022 to be appropriated by the state of Utah during fiscal years 2022 and 2023 is drafted per our workshop.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacques. Do I have a second? Seconded by Kevin. Discussion? I'll call for the motion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, we are now moving to allocation resolution for the allocation of health care facility sales and use tax revenue received during the calendar year 2022 to be distributed quarterly by Grand County. Chris?
Okay, so on this one, again, as per our workshop, I've got 60% less $330,000 to go towards Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District. Great, 40% to go to Grand County Emergency Medical Services, and then $330,000 toward the disproportionate share hospital match.
Thank you. I know we discussed this a great deal during our meeting, but after the meeting and between this meeting, I was re-looking at it and reading it and looking at the percent of money that I'm just very uncomfortable with this. I think I'm nervous about the fact that the special health district is getting so much less money than they asked for. what, and I don't know. I think sometimes when we ignore the requests of the people on boards and districts and you know, going ahead and doing what we think is best without listening to what they want, it doesn't build good relationships. So I much prefer going just 60-40 or what Chris first proposed.
Yeah, I would follow
Yeah.
up on that just to say that if we're not going to charge the healthcare special service district with administering the dish payment, it would, I think that the three entities, EMS, Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, and Moab Regional should be, you know, it should be equal, that sales tax should be divided equally amongst the, or, you know, that burden should be held equally amongst those three entities. And, you know, honestly, that's, you know, really the request, as Mary was suggesting, the request from the Healthcare Special Service District, that full 330 is just, it's a real hit to their bottom line. And but you know, as budgeted, that is what's planned. However, just trying to gather my thoughts here. Basically, all right, the point that I was going to make was, as budgeted, the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, you know, if given the duty to make the dish payments, that it is their every intent to make that payment. However, if there is a situation where that payment can't be made, as it has been in the past couple of years, it should be the county's obligation to make up for those lost funds, and that burden not directly put entirely on the Healthcare Special Service District.
I thought about it a lot during our hour off also, and I kind of revisited my vote, and after further thought, I would tend to agree more with Mary and Gabe on this. It bugged me going out of that workshop, and I spent the hour looking at the numbers, and I would, again, tend to agree with Mary and Gabe again on this.
My understanding, and this comes partly from Gabe, is that the letter we got from Joette said that if the tax projections are what the county says they are, then they are okay covering the dish. And I think the resolution that came out of the workshop is really equivalent to that. Now, there is a question of what if the tax projections come in low. And I think, I said at the workshop, I'll repeat it here, if those projections are low, then I think the county should revisit it and somehow make up the gap to the Healthcare Special Service District. So I guess I'm failing to see what the problem, it seemed like what we passed in terms of dollars and where they go is similar to something that was okay with EMS and also okay with the Healthcare Special Service District. So I guess I'm a little bit puzzled about what the problem with the resolution is, unless is that we're worried that the tax projections are going to come in low. But again, I would support the county, you know, doing a mid-year budget amendment to make sure that the Healthcare Special Service District doesn't suffer because of that.
I'll
Sarah?
speak to that, Kevin. In Joette's letter, she says that if the projections are right for a 30 to 50% increase in that tax, then they can cover the dish payment, no problem. And what Chris was working on was the 7% increase. So what we're budgeting a conservative number here, which is good. But my concern is that the conservative number that we're budgeting right now doesn't cover everything that the Canyonlands Healthcare District needs. But if it comes in much higher, then it will, for sure. But I'm on the same page as Mary and Gabe, where I think that we should give all of that money to the Canyonlands Special Service District, Healthcare District, so that they can make that decision. So they can prioritize the dish payment or other programming and make that decision, and then come back to the county to fund the difference if it's necessary.
Yeah, I guess I disagree with punting that decision to the Healthcare Special Service District Board when we could just as easily make it ourselves. And I think there was a lot of turmoil caused when the dish payment wasn't made, and because of the very limited number of ways that you can make the dish payment. To me, it just seems cleaner, especially since a lot of matching money, rides on the dish payment, just to guarantee that that gets paid. And then if other things come short, adjust on that end. I mean, I don't think any of us want to contemplate a situation in which the dish payment is not made, because we would lose so much additional money if it weren't. And so I think we should adopt something that guarantees that it is going to be paid.
Yeah. Sorry, just since everybody else was chiming in, I figured I would too. To Sarah's point, I would also underscore the fact that this allocation is under what the EMS was budgeting as well. They had requested 1.62 million in the neighborhood of that, and we're looking at 1.4 to them. And so that's a big shortfall. And as we highlighted in the workshop, most of the agencies are not getting what they requested. And so I'm also in the camp of making sure that dish payment gets made. I think it's nice to show that support to the hospital, and also under the advisement of our county attorney, she thought it was cleaner for us to take that contract and have that relationship with the state rather than sending money to the Healthcare Special Service District that would in turn turn around and send that money to the state. And so I'm still in favor of having that money separate, but if Mary or Gabe or Jacques feel strongly in just sticking with the 60-40 split as was requested by the two entities, I would be okay with that.
This is Chris. Just to clarify, I'm not entirely, I don't want to speak for Joette, but just to clarify, I was under the impression we were discussing the increase versus 2019's levels. And so what we're projecting for 2021 is a 51% increase in the healthcare sales tax right now. And then another 7 on top of that for 2022, just to kind of make it clear. And so I was under the impression that the 30 to 50% was in relation to 2019's numbers. And so for 2021, we're at 51% above. And then, there'll be another 7 on top of that based on the projection for 2022.
Well, Trish, were you leaning forward? Okay. I just can understand that when you the money that you're allocated and you're looking at doing your budget and it is cut, it makes it harder to plan. I did like Kevin's idea where he said, I can't remember. You said it right at the very beginning that you said you felt like this was a way to do it, that it would cover and not make any of the agencies feel slighted.
Yeah, I mean, based on the subsequent discussion, I'm not sure that would satisfy everybody anymore, but I was saying just split it 60-40 until we reach some kind of, pessimistic tax thing. And then once we hit that, send the money to the dish payment. And once that's covered, go back to splitting it 60-40 between the districts, which would work out the same as Chris's original proposal if the taxes come out high, but but if the taxes came out low, then the county would have to, I think, pay the dish payment out of general funds.
My only thing with that is EMS has no history whatsoever of contributing to the dish payment. And so they would suddenly be burdened with coming up with half of the dish payment. That, I mean, to me, that's the most like out of left field scenario out of any of them that we've heard so far.
I disagree. I think
proposal as well.
I think what that would do is that, you get your 60%, and then when you hit that, then to me that makes sense. I can't explain why it does, but it does.
It's EMS is not getting their 40% in that scenario.
They are getting 40% of the tax revenue that they projected. In fact, they're going to get more than that because almost certainly. So I think part of the problem is we really shouldn't be budgeting in terms of percentages. We should look at dollar amounts that these agencies need and then cover it with the health care special service district to the extent we can. And then, but because of the way the taxes are earmarked, it's not convenient to do it that way. But I guess one of my complaints about this same process is, entities are insisting on a certain percentage amount when the actual dollar amount that's going to translate into is somewhat uncertain. And yet they get attached to the percentage, even though the dollar amount might be more than what they're imagining. I don't know. So I think that was Chris's original point, is that the county thinks taxes are going up a lot more than these districts thought they were. So we have extra money. So let's use some of it to pay the dish payment and the remainder to give these entities more money than they thought was coming. And to me, that seemed like a very reasonable thing to do. But if a majority commission wants to do something different, I don't want to slow us down.
I'm hesitant to call any of this extra money. The EMS is also going through wage battles. People are leaving to go elsewhere. People are being recruited to Colorado. And this is the kind of thing that when the citizens that voted on this on the ballot, they're expecting when they call 911, somebody's going to show up at their house. And, it's to the point that there's historically high call volumes every year or every month. The call volumes are going up and up. And this idea that there's extra money or windfall is just kind of all of these, not just EMS, all of these districts are in need of funds. And so the reality is that we can't budget off. We don't know how many dollars are going to come in. I don't think these dollars should be spent elsewhere. I don't think extras, should go into a general fund, even though I realize they can't. And so the only way that we have to budget is through percentages. And so to carve out something to another agency that the EMS has never contributed to is, when they're presenting their budget, I don't think it's appropriate for this year. Now, if we want to revisit that in the future, if we want to look at the resolution that the Grant County Commission created when they created this sales tax, if we want to put a question on a ballot back to the voters when they approved the sales tax, so be it. But I think that that's more of a discussion for next year rather than for this year. So I, for one, am fairly adamant of sticking to the 60-40 split that has been projected since the EMS Special Service District was created. So.
Well, I said in the workshop I was going to try to agree with you all day, Evan, but you've defeated me. I don't think I agree with that. And suppose tax revenues are triple what they normally are. Would you still say it's not a windfall? Would we still be saying, EMS has to have 40%, even though it's no? I mean, clearly there comes a point, we could argue that we're not there yet, but the tax revenues this year are higher than we thought they were going to be, and so that's why I think we have some flexibility for how we distribute them.
And I would say that especially this year, the costs with purchasing new ventilators and all that to deal with COVID has surprised a lot of it, and we are far from the point of more money than is needed.
That is true with all the healthcare providers across the board.
Yeah.
So does someone want to make a motion? I don't think the thing in the workshop has 4 votes at the moment.
I would move to approve the version created in today's workshop. I don't know if that's a clean enough motion, but.
And so in particular, it's a 60-40 split, but the dish payment, instead of being routed through the special service district, is routed directly to the state. And so their allocation is $330,000 less than the 60% would be.
Yeah, so my motion would be 40% to EMS, 60% minus the dish payment to the healthcare special service district.
So Evan, you'll have to also, in your motion, include the adoption of the resolution to the same, because we need to pass a resolution.
Uh,
The resolution's already drafted that way, so you can just,
Okay.
you know.
resolution.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the draft resolution that I saw from during our break was in regards to the TRT. Did I miss another one? Here we go.
Yeah, all of them were included. So take a look at the one for healthcare sales tax.
Yep. And does this resolution spell out that split in one of the whereases?
It's in the now therefore at the bottom of page 2.
Now therefore, yeah, so it would be 60% less the 330,000 Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, 40% to Grand County Emergency Medical Service Districts, and 330,000 to disproportionate share hospital match, and approve the associated to be numbered resolution. Did that come out right? For a motion that's likely not going to pass.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to pass anyways. You don't have to get it right. I'll second that.
Thanks, Kevin.
Mary, you're muted.
I think I got to put my cursor over here so I don't accidentally move. Yeah, it's over there. Okay, motion by Evan, seconded by Kevin. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? Motion fails 3-4. Mary McGann, Sarah Stock, Jacques Hadler, and Gabriel Wojtek voting in opposition.
Chair, if I could make a motion.
Yes.
I move to adopt the resolution allocating healthcare facilities sales and use tax revenues received during calendar year 2022 to be distributed by Grand County as drafted, not as drafted, but with 60% going to Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District and 40% to Grand County Emergency Medical Services Special Service District.
Motion by Gabriel. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Sarah. Discussion.
I think this is the way to go because it gives the discretion to the Canyonlands Health Special Service District, who has been administering this payment in the past, and there's probably ample money to do it, but it gives them that buffer to be able to make decisions on their own. And I think in the future, if we're going to change how we distribute the healthcare tax, maybe we could get all 3 of the entities involved in a conversation about how that happens.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
And
okay.
I'll just add that from an administrative standpoint, this is a lot cleaner in terms of maintaining the relationship that the Healthcare Special Service District has with the Department of Health in completing the dish payment. And that in turn is going to remove that potential burden from the county administrator's office.
Thank you.
So
Kevin?
I'm going to vote in favor of this. It wasn't my preferred option, but if things work out as expected, it'll amount to the same thing. Though I do think it would have been better to route the dish payment directly. I wanted to make some remarks just about, not about this budget year, but about the healthcare special service task. And so I don't know if you'd rather I do it as part of this motion or afterwards. So why not, I'll do it right now since you hesitated.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't be, there are 5, in the state of Utah, there are 5 entities that charge this sales tax, the rural health sales tax. It's Kane County, Garfield County, Daggett County, and the city of Beaver. And everybody except for Grand County charges a 1% tax, not a 0.5% tax. And if we were collecting 1% or 0.75%, we wouldn't be having these arguments, presumably, because there'd be a lot more funding to go around. And so I think we should think very seriously about upping the tax to its natural limit, or at least closer there, the way every other entity in Utah has done. Because we're a tourist town, any sales tax we charge is heavily subsidized by tourists and visitors. So it's a good way for communities like ours to raise money. And in the past, so I would, I guess, urge the Healthcare Special Service District and EMS to, work hard, and I think the county can help along in publicizing the need for us to raise the tax. So
I agree, Kevin. I understand why it went down the way it did, because I remember I worked with them to get this passed, but I think it's time to go back to the voters and ask for a 1% sales tax increase. I agree. Any further discussion? All in favor of Gabriel's motion, raise your hand, say aye. All opposed? Your hand, I wasn't sure, Trish, your hand came up with the opposed? I think so. Okay, motion
I thought it was, oops. I interpret, she's frozen right now, but I interpreted her as a yes vote, Mary.
Okay.
I'll second Kevin. I think Trish was in favor of it.
It was really hard to tell, wasn't it? It was like,
it was on the edge.
It was on the edge. So let's go with passes unanimously. Okay. Now we are to approving allocations of transient room tax funds for calendar year 2022. Let me get that one up. Okay.
Okay, so on this one, Mary, I also sent out a revised agenda summary via email. Again, reflecting. Yeah, so it was in the email that I sent out to the commissioners. So in this case, what?
It wasn't with the email where we got the resolutions. It was in a separate one, or with the resolutions?
I've got it. I can make the motion from Chris's email.
Okay, thank you.
As we discussed, 400,000 to solid waste and 137,000 to the Recreation Special Service District.
I'll make the motion. Yeah. I move to direct the Budget Advisory Board to draft for inclusion in the 2022 tentative budget allocations as follows from transient room tax: 400,000 to the Grand County Solid Waste Special Service District and 137,000 to the Grand County Recreation Special Service District.
Motion by Kevin. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mary.
Okay. Seconded by Trish. Further discussion?
I just want to note for the record that during the workshop, we discussed that this is just a recommendation. It won't become final until we consider the rest of the budget and other demands made on these various TRT funding sources. So.
Thank you. I think that's a very good clarification for the people receiving the money to hear. Any further discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Adopting ordinances repealing ordinance number 467 in part and resolution number 3138, and adopting new bylaws for the airport board. Andy. Is Andy here?
I'm not seeing Andy.
I don't see Andy.
Andy.
So I'll move that we postpone this agenda item.
Well, I could probably take it if y'all want. It's
Okay.
not too complicated. I worked with Andy on it. There are existing bylaws. They have been amended a couple of times. Let me just get there. The airport board has considered this. It has gone through legal review. I am not there yet in my agenda. There's nothing really dramatic that we're changing here. It was really something that had been on Andy's to-do list since he started with the county and he was just getting around to it. It does update the name change, which is not substantive in terms of operation, but a good thing. You know, we have numerous airport operational documents now. We have, you guys have approved the minimum standards and the rules and regulations. So there were updates to make these documents all consistent with the bylaws. There was some sloppy treatment in our county history with how the prior bylaws were approved. So that's been cleaned up. I think that's it. There's nothing too dramatic here. It's really pretty administrative cleanup type of stuff.
Questions?
So the version in the packet was not a red line. So I guess I'm just saying that I'm trusting you that there's nothing dramatic in there since it's not easy to check that directly.
You can trust me, Kevin.
Okay.
That is accurate.
Just questions, discussion, motion? Thank you, Sarah. You have to unmute.
Sorry, I thought I could put space and it took me away from my, here it is. I moved to adopt the ordinance repealing ordinance number 467 in relevant part and resolution number 3138 and adopt the new bylaws of the Grand County Airport Board.
Motion by Sarah. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Jacques. Discussion? All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, number I, adopting ordinance repealing and replacing Article 9, Administration and Procedures, and amending Article 10, Definitions of the Grand County Land Use Code. Alyssa Martin.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
So this is, you know, we've been here before, and I'm hoping this is our last iteration on the Article 9 amendment, draft amendments. I think we've come a long way since we started on this, and since the last County Commission meeting with this agenda item, we've addressed several of the Commission's concerns regarding some of the inconsistencies with the draft language regarding like the public hearing requirements for conditional use permits, and that table has been cleaned up a lot. We also added some additional requirements for plat notes, specifically pertaining to stormwater drainage, which I think are going to be very beneficial going forward. We cleaned up the minor subdivision section quite a bit. So I think we have come a long way, like I said, and I hope this draft looks good for you guys. And let me know if you have any questions.
Questions?
I would just add quickly, I think it was Sarah at our last meeting that brought up that she would like affirmative language that meeting notices would be published on the Utah Public Notice website and the county website. And that is added to 9.1.8A in the main paragraph. That's also required in statute, but I can appreciate that she wanted it in the land use code. Started by reference. And one thing that's new from the last draft you've seen is the pot note section that Elise referred to, and Lucas, the county surveyor, who also is the only surveyor in town, requested that. And typically county staff and the engineer and the road supervisor in particular, and myself, would negotiate those plat notes with the applicant. We have standard ones, but Lucas pointed out, hey, this really needs to go in your land use code. And I agree. So you see that at the end of the final plat requirements in section 9.5.
Thank you, Christina. Any further questions? I would entertain a motion.
I will move to adopt the ordinance repealing and replacing Article 9 and amending Article 10 of the Grand County Land Use Code as shown in Exhibit A.
Motion by Jacques. Do I have a second? Seconded by Kevin. Discussion. This has been discussed. Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Passes unanimously. We are to item J. Can't believe it. Adopting ordinance repealing and replacing Title I of the General Grand County Ordinance. Administrative hearing and penalties. Christina Sloan.
So yeah, this is Title I of our general ordinances, which is our general provisions. You're seeing it as a repeal and replace because we touched a few things, because I have never amended those earlier sections, but really this is about honing our process in chapter 1.16, which is our relatively new administrative appeals and hearing process. What was coming up, now we have our code compliance officer, and he actually approached me and asked for this amendment, because what was coming up was our timeframes were so long that someone could violate, for example, an overnight accommodation ordinance for 60 days based on the length of, we'd give them 21 days to respond, we'd give them 30 days to appeal. So they could essentially go through, each busy season violating our land use code without us being able to get on top of it. We also didn't have any express provision allowing him to issue, or the county, but it would be the code compliance officer, to issue cease and desist orders for egregious violations. And that would be things like operating without, the correct business license or overnight accommodations permits, period, in violation of not just the land use code, but other titles in the ordinances, but also things that might have health and safety violations. So we did have an issue recently, just an example of how this came up, was we had an illegal glamping operation that was operating on private property on the highway. The property is not in the OAO overlay. They do not have any overnight accommodations permits of any type. The glamping operation was not the owner, and that company did not have a sales tax license with the state of Utah. They weren't registered to do business in Utah with the state, and they didn't have a business license. So in every way, they were out of compliance, and yet, and he had to get me involved. And I do have the power under Title V and some of our other county law to go ahead and issue that cease and desist order regardless, but he didn't have that authority. So this is cleaning up some of that. It's also, so it's tightening up the timeframes, but it's also creating a voluntary compliance process. So the point there is, hey, landowner, you have 10 days to respond, but then we're going to work with you. As long as you are working with us, we're going to work with you, and we'll enter into this agreement. We are still admittedly working on the compliance agreement form, but we'll have a form that we use with landowners to more amicably, hopefully, resolve these land use code issues. So you do have a red line. Let me know if you have questions.
Questions? I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
Go ahead,
Trish.
Trish.
Oh, Feel free, Jacques. Don't let me. I can go. Okay. I move to adopt the proposed ordinance repealing and replacing Title I of the General Grand County Ordinances.
Motion by Trish, seconded by Jacques. Discussion. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are to the consent agenda, approving service agreement with Motivation Incorporated for virtual training and quality assurance for dispatch in the amount of $7,912.88. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Chair, if I may.
Mhm.
I move to approve the service agreement with Motivations Inc. for virtual training and quality assurance for dispatch in the amount of $7,912.88.
Thank you, Jacques. Discussion?
That was actually Gabe.
I mean, Gabe, I'm sorry, Gabe.
I'll second
Motion by Gabe, seconded by, I'm sorry, seconded by Jacques, or was that Kevin?
It was
Kevin. Okay, motion by Gabriel, seconded by Kevin. Discussion? All in favor? Passes unanimously. We are to calendar items and special events. Mallory.
Okay, I'm doing the strange phone video, so if you can't hear me, let me know. There's just a few things as we continue to go through the fun special event changes, which are a few still in process, but the first is we have Barrels for Bucks, which is out at Osta. Angie Book was out of town, and we were working on a few things, but some of the items needed for that to be complete were sent to her, and I wasn't included in them. So that is fully complete. It's gone through the referral agency review. It just is pending the complete review from the committee to give the go-ahead. And I believe it will be approved. And then they have a second event out at Osta, the same thing, just later in the year in October. Then this weekend, we are supposed to have Outer Bike, and that one is in process. I believe it still needs to go to the referral agencies and then on to the Special Event Advisory Committee. So hopefully that will be coming through soon. I think it starts on Saturday or next week. I wrote these dates wrong incorrectly. And then another upcoming one in process is the Cregan Classic. I say that incorrectly, but they're coming up. And actually kind of a positive thing, I talked to the applicant because they were hoping to have a bit of a dance party, if you will, and I let them know about the noise ordinance. And they decided to go ahead and change that dance party to a silent disco. So I thought that was pretty cool and creative, but that's all that I have right now, unless you all have questions about the special events or calendar.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mallory. We are to public hearing. Public hearing to solicit public comment on the proposed ordinance applying to overnight accommodation overlay RV campground to Willow Springs Campground, parcel number 04-0020-0038 at 13733 North Highway 191. Alyssa.
Okay, thank you, Mary. So yes, this is a request for the OAO, Overnight Accommodations Overlay RV Campground District, to be applied to a 12.41 acre parcel located off Highway 191 at the intersection with SR 313. The site is within the Scenic Resource Protection District and current zoning is resort special. The applicant has worked extensively on design and concept with regard to the SRPD and the OAO requirements. The subject property is located adjacent to a state campground that was approved recently, and other nearby properties are also designated campgrounds with OAO RV campground zoning. The proposed project is located within the North Corridor Recreation Polygon of the future land use map in the general plan. This designation encourages nodes of tourism-oriented resort commercial development, rural density residential development, and viable livestock grazing and natural resource development on private and state lands. This project is consistent with the general plan future land use designation of North Corridor Recreation in the following ways. It provides for tourism-oriented development as well as resort commercial by offering overnight camping and other amenities in an area with access to Arches National Park and nearby public lands and trails. By designating 3.2 acres of open space within the development, which is 25% of the total 12.41 acres on the parcel. That's also noted in the general plan for any new commercial development to require 25% set aside for open space. The development is designed to have minimal impact on the scenic view shed of the North Corridor, as demonstrated by the view shed analysis provided by the applicant, and the fact that the site is located within topography which conceals the development from travelers along Highway 191 partially. The current resort special zoning allows for commercial as well as residential uses. The applicant intends to propose future commercial uses, including a restaurant, an outfitter guide service, and long-term residential dwellings, including on-site employee housing, under a separate application for site plan review. The concept plan in the agenda packet includes the campground as well as the future proposed uses allowed in the resort special zone. In terms of the OAO requirements, the applicant has done a thorough job of addressing each of the OAO standards as well as the 191-313 small area plan and intent of the SRPD. The land use code specifically states that OAO districts should be applied only to parcels planned or historically used primarily for such use and activity, accessible directly by an arterial, and where appropriate and compatible with adjacent land uses and neighborhoods. The Willow Springs Campground meets all of these intentions, as prior to adoption of the OAO ordinance, the resort special zone allowed overnight accommodations, including RV campgrounds. Adjacent land uses in this area are zoned OAO RV campground districts. Thus, this development would be compatible with and appropriate for the surrounding area. The subject parcel is also accessed by a main arterial. Furthermore, this application meets the intent of the OAO by the following factors. It offsets its impact on housing by proposing future on-site employee housing. It reduces traffic in town by proposing future development of basic amenities on site. The development offsets its energy and water consumption by utilizing gray water recycling and solar power energy. In addition to the Willow Springs Campground that has the potential to reduce illegal camping in the area by bringing services to the site. While there is evidence of demand for additional camping space in the general area, and this project may seem to provide a benefit in relieving some public land camping, there is no guarantee that those user groups are the same and that the increased demand for dispersed camping would be alleviated by this campground being established. This is a hard metric to measure, and the conclusion is largely dependent on best guesses. We do not currently have any kind of user surveys for dispersed camping at this time in that area. The Willow Springs RV Campground is designed to minimize impact on scenic resources in alignment with the standards set forth in LUC Land Use Code Section 2.12.4 District Standards for the Resort Special Zone, and subsequently Section 4.8.4, the Scenic Resource Protection District. The development achieves this by orienting the RV sites to run perpendicular to Highway 191, reducing the parking lot feel that would otherwise exist if the development was oriented parallel along the Highway 191 frontage. All other future proposed buildings will be set back towards the rear of the property where they are not as visible from the highway. A sound barrier wall of natural desert colors will be constructed on the north end where the future home sites would be located. Shade trees and native vegetation will be planted to screen the sound barrier wall and aid in blending the built environment with the natural surroundings. The property is on the west side of the highway. The view of the 7 Mile Rim cliffs directly behind the property will not be obscured by the campground or other proposed structures. The property itself is not visible from Arches National Park. So in summary, the applicant is applying for 60 overnight accommodation units, which is the maximum allowed and shall not be exceeded even in the event of future subdivision as per the development agreement. The 60 OAO units include 40 RV sites, 15 cabin sites, and 5 tent sites. Willow Springs Campground Master Plan includes development of an access road, interior roads, and all site improvements necessary to support the campground. Gray water recycling is planned for shower and bathroom buildings, and solar energy will provide power for common areas. The applicant has been in conference with UDOT regarding a possible access lane off Highway 191 and has also been working with the Department of Environmental Quality on initial wastewater system design and has provided an engineering report that shows that this project is approvable and that the existing water rights appropriation is sufficient to supply water for the proposed development. Upon submission of a site plan application, the traffic impacts public water and wastewater system to serve the development will be further evaluated. Staff's recommendation is to approve the Willow Springs OAO RV campground rezone. The developers have demonstrated that this project complies with the OAO and Scenic Resource Protection District standards, and surrounding uses are consistent with the proposed use of a campground. And I'm open to questions.
Chris, I have a question on, since it's a public hearing, is this the time that the commission should ask the questions, or should they wait to be asking the questions when we are ready to vote? Or does it matter?
I think it's fine to ask questions now. I mean, we try to avoid deliberating during the public hearings because we wait 2 weeks, and then so it's, kind of the opportunity for the public to have their say. And then we usually deliberate in the meeting afterward. But with regard to clarifying questions and just making sure everybody understands what's being proposed, I think right now is an appropriate time to ask those questions, because they may play into how somebody may, or play into the public hearing and what questions the public might have, or statements, etc.
Okay, that's what I thought. I knew it wasn't a time to deliberate, but I wasn't sure about the questions. So, commission, do you have any questions at this point?
Has the OAO been applied to any other properties recently?
No, it has not.
I think, didn't we apply it to that thing out by Westwater a year or so, a very small stargazing cabin?
They have not gone through the process yet. They're currently, they're going to be probably coming to Planning Commission very soon. Yeah. So.
Yes.
The Planning Commission did not forward a favorable recommendation. Could you speak to the difference between the staff recommendation and the Planning Commission's recommendations?
Sure. Yeah, the Planning Commission actually had made a motion to approve the rezone, but the vote was split. So I believe, I can bring that up, there were 2 for and 2 against, and then 2, something like that, like 2 abstained. So it was basically a split vote, and then failed to be approved. I guess what staff is thinking is that according to our general plan and the work that had been done with the developing the small area plan for that area, in the Scenic Resource Protection District that came out of that, there seemed to be consensus that this kind of use would be acceptable under the new sort of conversation about that corridor. And it was also consistent with our general plan. So,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Evan.
I just had kind of 2 other sort of questions about metrics that you might have now, or if not, if that could be provided before the vote at the next meeting. When this body revised the overnight accommodation use by rights, one of the factors was the staggering number of permit applications for new construction. And a lot of those who had the permit requests were either being reviewed or had already been approved were yet to break ground. And I was curious if we could get an update on how many other permits are approved, how many other overnight accommodation permits are approved, which have not come online yet. I don't know if you have that now or if that's something later. And another kind of metric that we were looking at back then was the ratio of overnight accommodation units to primary residential units. And so I imagine those have changed as many of these new properties have come online. And I was wondering if you had that number, or if you could get it to us before the next meeting.
yeah, no, that is actually something that staff is currently working on. And that was brought up at the last Planning Commission meeting as well, when we were discussing OAO, different categories of OAOs and the issues there. But yeah, we are working on it currently. We definitely could get, I feel like we could get those numbers and that ratio updated before the next county commission meeting. Absolutely.
Well, and on that point, generally, I don't have numbers, but the projects that I'm aware of that have vested approvals but aren't built out are additional Rim Village phases. Sage Creek has additional phases and has been bought by a new owner who's pursuing those. Lions Back, of course, that's starting construction. You probably have seen, and I'm not sure what was there before, but it's by the Canyon Voyages southern property that's for sale. They've been slowly taking down the old warehouse building. That's a hotel that's being built. There's one other hotel that was annexed into the city that's behind the credit union. So it's 2 of those. And then Cloud Rock is still out there. So there are a number of overnight accommodations that are vested that you haven't seen.
And that tally is just outside of city limits?
Which one?
All those that you just referenced are outside of city limits. Are you aware of any that are within the city limits?
I know for sure the hotel that was annexed into the city is in the city. And I'm not sure about the hotel that's near Canyon Voyages. Elise, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to tally what is still vested and hasn't been built out in the county, and then also have a comparison for the total comprehensive build out number for county and city. Yeah, so I think we can definitely put that together and delineate those.
Great, that would help me in the decision.
It's not known yet, but it's worth noting also that if the Utah Raptor State Park also has sites, and the BLM is revising their management plan out in that area for potentially adding campsites.
Okay, yeah, we could look into that. I mean, I think it's great to have a comprehensive perspective with, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to leave any kind of related development out of the conversation, whether it's on public or private land. So yeah, you can wrap that into the analysis.
So I had kind of a long list of questions or points about the staff report. So maybe I'll take a break in the middle if it goes on too long. One thing is said in the staff report is that this is consistent with the future land use management plan, but I would have thought the future land use management plan was superseded by the small area plan, which is much more recent. So I guess to me, this seems like this is definitely not consistent with our recent planning. So I was surprised to see that in the staff report. Oh, and I meant to start by saying that this project predates everybody who's at the planning department now, as does the OAO ordinance. And I noticed that a lot of the language in the staff report, I think I first read like a year and a half or two, quite some time ago. So I'm not laying this at the feet of the current planning staff. So if I say anything that's wrong, please jump in. Another comment, in several places in the staff report, it's referencing aspects of the OAO rules, and it says, well, the developer is going to do X, Y, or Z in the future. But I think certainly the intention of the OAO rules, that if you're going to build some more benefit, it comes as a part of a master plan that does it at the same time as the developments. We've got a similar principle in our high density housing overlay program, where you don't get to like build all the open market units first and then promise that you're going to build the workforce units later. They have to happen at the same time. So that seems like a pretty big flaw in the plan to me.
Kevin, I can address that right now if possible, because
yeah, please.
Okay, because that was something that we went back and forth with internally in our department, and working with the attorney in terms of presenting this application and the master plan really reflecting just the entitlement, or I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, but the intention of the 60 units being what is the 60 units of campsites that would be approved as part of the OAO. And so originally the applicant actually had the master plan was inclusive of everything. It was the employee housing, the commercial aspects, and a couple of residential units that were for long-term housing. And those were, we were advised to have the applicant take those out in order to kind of make it a really clean application just for OAO use. And then, because the other uses that we're talking about, the commercial and the residential, are allowed already under resort special. So I hear you that it's kind of like, it's tricky to feel like good about the promises of a future site plan review that would include those uses, but I can absolutely attest to the integrity of his original application, which was to include all of those uses, and that is the overall plan.
Okay, well, I do think it was the intent of the OA ordinance that those things would be part of a package, again, sort of analogous to the HDHO, and so if that, I'd have to go and review the section 4.6 or 7, whatever it is. But if that's not required right now, I think we should revise it so that it is.
Sure. I think there's a gray area in interpreting that for sure.
Kevin and Christina can talk to this as well. One of the issues about the master plan is that it's associated, with a legislative action. And so at the point in time that they draft their master plan, which is kind of a site plan, we haven't really reviewed in detail a lot of the aspects that are not associated with the legislative action itself. And going through the process to, before you get to the point where you really nail down the details, you have to process the preliminary a plat, get through the plat process and be much further along on the details. The big problem with including those details at this preliminary stage in a master plan is that the master plan is a legislative action, and so it vests whatever on that plan, legislatively speaking. And so there's a lot of jeopardy, quite honestly, in doing that, I think. And Christina, I think, can attest to this as well. But all the requirements of OAO, including any workforce housing that might be a part of the assured housing policy, et cetera, would be included in the administrative process that comes after this. And so I just want to make you aware that, if whatever you put in that master plan is going to be a legislative right. And so I do think we have to be careful about how much we put on those master plans because it's tied to the legislative action. Maybe Christina, if she's still on, can clarify.
Yeah, the only other thing, that's well said, and I did require all the other uses to be removed for that reason from the master plan. There is nothing prohibiting applicant from providing a concept plan for you guys to look at it. Here we are in this tricky place where you need to make sure this property is appropriate for the rezone request before you, which is overnight accommodations. And I understand that the small area plan puts some emphasis on mixed use developments. But again, a rezone, you're looking at, the appropriateness of this property for that zone for the uses that will be vested by the rezone.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit confused here. So let's just consider a hypothetical. Someone wants to build a hotel. The OAO things, say that if the county is going to give permission to do that, we want to see like community benefits, and they say we're going to build an auditorium as part of the hotel. And then we make our legislative decision and rights vest. But it sounds like you're saying that it wouldn't be till later that we would actually require that those promised things are built. Because it seems what's happening here is we're being asked to give the right for 60 RV spots, and then the other benefits are sometime in the future. So that seems confusing to me.
I don't have a good answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit technical also because development agreements, by state statute have to be, the give and take has to be proportional. Otherwise, you run the risk of running up against that statute. And so when we talk about we do have the capacity, I think, to negotiate things in a development agreement, but they have to be roughly proportional, which is to say that what the public's getting and what the developer is getting are roughly proportional to one another. But we tend to try to.
Well, yeah, the development agreement statute was updated in the last general session, so that development agreement has to go through the same public hearing process. And certainly what was presented and what was presented through the application was not really vetting the entire mixed use development. And therefore it wasn't appropriate that it goes on the master plan, which is being vetted by OAO. So.
Well, I've got a lot of other items, so maybe we can talk more about this later. So there was some discussion, I think it was part of the staff report, about traffic reduction. And I was just curious, to me, that seems very implausible. I mean, there's not a whole lot out there in 191, and I think it's pretty rare for someone to be camped out there and not come into Moab. So did the planning staff have some reasoning that they thought people really would stay out there and come in? And otherwise, it just seems like the claims about traffic reduction don't make sense.
Yeah, the only kind of basis for that, Kevin, was the fact that they originally, and this is still the plan and the overall concept, is to provide amenities to the guests such that they would not need to make trips to town for a restaurant fare or for an outfitter guide service, those kinds of things that it might not be the hugest impact for sure, but I think it has some you know, there's some, a bit of proportion of the traffic that might be alleviated for that.
Well, I just guess in the future, it would be nice if those, I mean, if it's a minuscule traffic reduction, then it wouldn't really influence our decision. So
sure. I mean, I think that there's also kind of an idea that, you know, what we've been trying to understand as staff in regards to this Scenic Resource Protection District is if there's development along that corridor, it seems like it has to do kind of with a tourist kind of background or tourist related use. And, you know, looking into the future, if that's what's going to be happening out there, I think that that could be kind of more of an area that would be self-sufficient in terms of tourist attraction and people accessing public lands out there, and maybe overall in the long term. But I think, yeah, you're right. It is a bit of a stretch to say that that's a big impact on traffic.
Okay. And then similarly, and this has been discussed in a prior meeting, but there's a claim that it's going to reduce illegal camping, but everything I've understand from talking about with public land managers who actually talk to the dispersed camping people is they have very little interest, or most of them have no interest in camping in a commercial site. I mean, they like the fact that they've got space around them. They like the fact that it's free. And so everything I've heard points away from the claim that this is going to reduce illegal camping. So I don't, again, if the planning staff knows something that I don't, please say so.
I contacted Nicole at BLM, knowing this was coming up, and being so involved with the issues at Willow Springs and Dalton Wells, I asked her, you know, would this help? And what I asked her really was, when are they going to be able to I asked her, what is the criteria for the BOM to post camping only in designated areas? Because I don't think, you know, as long as people can come here and find a place to camp, they're going to come if they have the ability to. And she said that right now they're working on an NEPA to create a camping restrictions that will then need to go through the Federal Register before they can be implemented. This is at least a year out. We are working diligently to define the areas that need to be restricted to designated sites only. The process is a long one, but we will get there. Typically, campgrounds tend to help the dispersed camping issue because it is easier than trying to figure out where to go. So oftentimes you get a mixed group of people who disperse camp because they want to, and then you have the group that disperse camp because they can't find another place. So you have a mixture of both. We'd almost have to do a study to determine what percentage there is. But she says there are those people when they walk around and talk to them that say, oh, I would have camped I'd have preferred a camping site, but we couldn't get one, so we're out here. I know that's happened to me before. And then there's the ones that say, no, I don't want to pay and I want to be out here. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I've also talked with Nicole about the dispersed camping, and I think to the BLM's credit, they are working on, you know, taking a much larger area and making it designated sites only, which I think is the real way to help with the illegal camp or that type of camping. So, but I'm a little bit skeptical that creating commercial campgrounds is going to make much difference there.
When I went over to Escalante, there, if you've and gone through there, there's very little campgrounds, developed campgrounds in that area. And, so we disperse camping when we go over there. And I sometimes visit with the people, and I always find a mixed bag of people. Some do, some don't,
So my next item, and this is one of the big ones, there's a statement in the staff report, which I think predates, our current planning staff saying, and this is in reference to the ratio of overnight accommodations to primary residential units. And it says it has not changed significantly since 2019. But that's obviously false, right? Since 2019, there's a lot of vested units and many of those have been built. And I think that ratio, there was a lot of debate when we were talking about the overnight accommodation ordinance about trying to put some hard triggers. And, and the public comment we got the most often was we should build out the pipeline before allowing even more projects to vest. And what that got translated to in the ordinance was this saying that we should take into account this ratio. So I think I am disappointed in not the current planning staff, but their predecessors for not even trying to calculate that. If I can share my screen, I can show my attempt to calculate that just based on a half hour this morning. Sorry, there it is. So this is the table that Zachariah put together quite a while ago, just the black part. And you see we've got existing units as best that could be determined. And then this column of things that were vested but not constructed as of 2019. And then I've highlighted in yellow all the ones that are built now. I think I got this roughly right. There's some that I weren't sure of. So if you add those up and then compute a new ratio, it comes out to roughly 1.7 just for things that are on the ground. That's this thing right here. And of course, if we build out the entire pipeline, it goes up to 1.9. Now that's assuming that we're building like roughly 100 new residential units a year. I don't know the precise figure for that, but I doubt it's a lot more than that. And another way to look at it is if all these projects are built, we could ask how many additional residential units post 2019 will we have to build in order to keep the ratio just at 1.4, which is the ratio that everybody thought was too high in 2019. Remember all the public discontent about that. And the answer comes out to 1,135 additional housing units. And we're nowhere close to doing that. So I think it is beyond question that 1.4 ratio that we wrote into the code that people thought was too high in 2019, we are now much higher than that and on the road to getting higher still. So to me, that by itself, well, I guess we're not supposed to deliberate, but I think that's very significant. I'll just say that. And again, I'm glad that the planning staff is trying to get a hold of this ratio, and I wish that past planning staff, not you guys, but your predecessors had, it should have been done a long time ago.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Did you want to keep going, Kevin?
I could, but if you wanted to respond to that particular point, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be great. I really appreciate the work that you've done on that. And you actually kind of making my job a little easier because we've done some analysis so far, but your numbers are really interesting too. And I would love to, if you could send me that, it would be great to compile that with what we've already kind of started to work on. Yeah, I think that ratio, we definitely need to get a handle on that. And it was unfortunately remained in the staff report that it was kind of not really looked at and unchanged. So there is concern for that. And like I said, we are very dedicated to getting an answer regarding that analysis.
No, I applaud you for taking it on and planning on computing that. I've only got two items left on my list.
Okay.
There's a claim that the RVs will be visible from the road for only about 10 seconds. I was hoping to get out there today and just see whether that seemed plausible to me, and I didn't, but I was just curious whether planning staff checked that independently or is that just taken from the application?
We have not verified that independently. Planning staff has not done that analysis. So that is basically taken from the applicant's view shed analysis that they did.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
And
And then-
Alyssa, just to reiterate, sorry, Kevin, you said it's on the west side of the highway?
Yes.
Yeah, I would go out there because there's not a lot of topography right there that to me it's different on the east side, but I
Yeah.
think that would be, I'm glad you brought that up, Kevin. I think it'd behoove them to go out there and look at that closely.
Yeah, we can do that. I did speak with staff in planning and zoning that are locals and been here forever, and mainly Mary. And she did, I don't want to quote her necessarily, put her on the line, but she kind of recalled that that there was a bit of a lower elevation versus higher where the development site is actually sited. So again, that would be good to actually make the drive though.
Okay. And my last item concerns the claim that, actually, I guess there's two more items, but one is the claim that this is compatible with the small area plan. I was surprised to see that because I was on the planning commission when we were putting together the small area plan, and it was specifically brought up, do we think that RV parks are a good use for this area? Should we say that, in the future, we might want to consider designating overnight accommodation overlay zones for RV parks in this area? And that got a very negative response on the planning commission. So it was very deliberate that the small area plan does not call for these things. I mean, we didn't have to explicitly prohibit them because it's, they were prohibited in all zones at that point, but we had the option of saying that we thought that was an appropriate use for the area, and that was considered and rejected. Also, there was a very large public survey during the small area plan where people were asked explicitly, do you think that RV camping is a good use for this area? And I couldn't find a current my memory though is that roughly 65, some very large majority of the respondents disapproved of that use. So
75%. And I did just send that. I didn't actually have just the survey, Kevin, but I had basically kind of, they synthesized it into a PowerPoint. So I sent that to all the commissioners.
Okay.
And I can send that along to you.
Oh, that would be great, Tricia. Thank you.
Okay, so you said it was 75% who disapproved? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, I just to touch on that really briefly is that what staff is going on is the section in our land use code that describes the standards and the purpose of the Scenic Resource Protection District. And since we really need, we look at the code ultimately to back up anything. And it is a little vague in terms of what the allowed uses would be. In section 4.8.3, the allowed uses are governed by the underlying zone district pursuant to Article 3, the preferred zone district for parcels within the SRPD with access adjoining US Highway 191 and Utah State Route 313 is resort special, which the parcel is within resort special, and so it doesn't call out a restriction against RV parks or campgrounds specifically, and it also doesn't really give a ton of guidance on what the allowed uses. It's a bit vague, is what I'm trying to get at. So
okay, that's understandable, and I can understand how there's a bit of a loss of institutional memory because of the turnover in the planning department. Also, Mary Hoffine, even though she's been in the planning department a long time, she was not in the planning department when the small area plan was being crafted. Right. But it was definitely discussed in the planning commission and rejected, but I guess we didn't, write it into the language. And then I promise this time, final point. I do think there's a sort of overall misunderstanding of the overall overnight accommodation ordinance, because it seems like in various parts of the staff report, you're saying, well, this proposal checks all the boxes, therefore we recommend approval. And that's not at all how it's supposed to work. It was very deliberately crafted as a legislative decision where the planning commission would decide, we will approve one of these if we think it's an overall benefit to the community. Like basically, do we need more tourist accommodation? Do we need more RV parks for whatever reason? And then if we do decide that, then there's a bunch of criteria that any development has to think, but those are, I guess, a mathematician would say it says necessary but not sufficient conditions. So I don't agree with the reasoning in the staff report that just, because it meets all these criteria, that's by itself is a reason to recommend approval. I think the bar for approval is intended to be much higher than that. And again, maybe that's not clear. So, please don't take any of the criticism personally. And I know a lot of the staff report was written.
Not at all. And no, I actually really appreciate your feedback because it's something that we've kind of been searching for. And we've gone, as you know, Tricia had reported earlier on the Planning Commission workshop on the OAO. And I think, staff, us being new, trying to really get a handle on what had gone down in 2019 and what the real kind of intention was, and trying to interpret that for these applications that are coming forward. So yeah, I'm not taking it personal. I really appreciate your feedback, and we will. I think that it might be best if we as staff sort of take more of a neutral position on the recommendation and going forward on any more of the future applications, because there are a few coming down the pipeline. But just to kind of try to really present the facts and let County Commission and Planning Commission deliberate.
Yeah, I do think it's a good idea because unlike a lot of planning things, this is a legislative decision, not an administrative one.
Absolutely.
And so we're not relying on staff to tell us, does this conform to ordinances, and therefore there's a presumptive approval. This is very different. So yeah, I think that's a good idea that you put forth there. So just to summarize, I think the two really big things are one, based on sitting through all the meetings on the small area plan, I don't think this is compatible. And two, I think the overnight accommodation ordinance was written in such a way that if we've still got a lot of units in the pipeline, it's kind of discouraging future commissions from approving new overnight accommodations. I recall some discussion, I recall Evan 2 or 3 years ago saying that if something really great came along, that offered really high paying jobs or just did something amazing, we wanted a pathway where we could approve that, even if it did mean doing that. But I think this is not that amazing project that Evan was thinking of in 2019. It's just a regular RV park so I think I think the ratio is important. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Or did he cover all your questions?
I had one question, and maybe it's in there, but I tried to find it. Just where are they getting water? Is it a well?
Yeah, it is a well. It's a proposed well. And I think in the staff report, I mentioned that the applicant had been working with an engineer on that and has gotten initial approval and a water appropriation as well.
Does it come? I know there's some rules that Arches water is protected. Is it close to that aquifer?
It could be, Mary, and I am aware of that. I know there was there's a zone for that aquifer that cannot be tapped into, and so I know there's been a precedent for another well that was drilled in that area that was able to seal the well, I guess, and I don't know the technical terms, but to be able to go past that zone and go deeper into a different aquifer that wasn't affecting that, wasn't hydrologically connected. So I know there is there is one example of that being done, and they've worked with the National Park Service on getting approvals and a plan for monitoring that. So I don't know. That would I think, as I stated in the staff report, that the water infrastructure and wastewater system would all be something that would be evaluated in more detail at site plan approval. So, and the rezone doesn't necessarily guarantee that everything's going to go smoothly at site plan.
Any other questions, comments from the commission? Okay, I will open up this public hearing. It is 6:38. Do we have anyone in the waiting room, Mallory, to speak on this?
Mary, I see that Michael Namaste as well as Reed Pendleton, the applicant, are on. I'm not sure if either of them want to comment or our process with the applicant.
Oh, and I need to set up the criteria. We like public comment to be around 3 minutes. Be sure and state your name. And this one, I thought there was going to be a whole bunch of people here. I had it planned to say, if somebody's already said what you wanted to say, but there isn't. So, yes.
Mary?
Yes,
And we usually
Reed?
give the applicant a little bit longer than 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, we do give the applicant longer. And there, it looks like there's probably only going to be 2 people commenting. I thought we'd have a whole lot. So, yeah. So just, be precise. Okay, Reed?
Yeah, so I wasn't sure when I'd get a chance to speak. So I do have a few clarifying comments first before a statement. For Sarah, we do have an established well that's already drilled with a guaranteed water right. So that's already established and in place. And then to answer a few of Commissioner Walker's comments, and to clarify a few of those, the pipeline that's still to be built out on overnight accommodations from the get-go was probably 90% hotel rooms. And so we can keep building hotel rooms and build out the entire pipeline. But the problem is that we're having camping problems right now. And there's nothing in the pipeline to fix those problems. And so while I understand, his point is accurate, that we do have a lot of those still to be built, we're not having any campgrounds being built that are taking care of the other problem, which is campers, which we do have problems in this county with. On the small area plan, to rebut a little bit of what he said there, in the county commission workshop on the small area plan, they did a straw poll on overnight accommodations. And there was comments from the commission to include RV campgrounds in the small area plan. And so when we went back to planning commission as a citizen, I was at all these meetings. I asked the planning commission how they were going to incorporate RV park and campgrounds into the small area plan. And the decision was made that they would leave all overnight accommodations out of the plan and let the commission, so they weren't going to make any permitted uses is what I'm saying. So the county commission would in the end still be the decision maker on any overnight accommodations that came through the county. And that includes those in the small area plan. So there is no writing about overnight accommodations in the area plan because it's a county-wide ordinance that doesn't specify anywhere that they're permitted. And then a comment on the traffic plan. The only way that we can eliminate traffic trips to town is to be building north of town. I mean, that's just logic. When we build out this entire development, we can literally provide every needed resource for a tourist north of town. There will be no reason for a tourist to necessarily go to town. They can go to Arches, they can go to Canyonlands, they can ride trails, they can bike, they can go to a restaurant, they can get gas across the street, they can go on river trips. Like there's literally no reason for them to go to town if they don't want to. And so that's the whole purpose of developments north of town, is to eliminate the traffic in town. And then let me just jump into a few of my comments here. So let's see. Okay, so, I have been working on this project for 3 years, and I have been working with the county in many aspects on this project, involved in all of the development standards for all of this area and the county. I do understand that the words overnight accommodations are sensitive to this town, but I encourage people submitting comments for this development to actually understand the development first before they state their opinions. I hope the public understands that this commission has been overwhelmingly supportive of developed campsites north of town, even after delaying my application last year. This commission supported FFSL developed campground on the neighboring public property at Dalton Wells. They also supported the new state park with a potential campground, which is on the neighboring public lands north of me. So when we think about approving new overnight accommodations, I think there are other factors that need to be considered when it comes to the quality of the development. And this may read into a little bit of what Kevin was talking about. Anybody can come in and invest money and develop something to the new standards that we've laid out. It's just a dollar sign. I think we need to find ways to support people in our community. I am a local and my money stays here. Because of my current overnight accommodations development, I have been able to create and currently provide long-term affordable housing options for 19 individuals who live and work in Moab. I've started 3 additional businesses here in Moab since arriving 7 years ago. I'm still involved with the planning processes for overnight accommodations and am committed to making Moab a destination for tourists as well as residents. I'm not here just to collect a bunch of money and leave and spend it elsewhere. And I think that's important to say. Outside of a quality development, I think the need of the development is also an important part of your decision. The need of a development can be relative for many factors, but here are some facts that support this development. Josh, our code enforcement officer, has talked at many meetings lately about his illegal camping problems. And even Christina just touched on the illegal glamping thing that was right across the street from us, up north of town. So people are doing illegal camping, whether they're permitted or not. And to this fact, there actually has been a study done on the need for camping north of town. At the FFSL presentation last June, there was a study done by USU in 2017 of the people that dispersed camp north of town on the public lands. And that study showed that 83% of the campers would be willing to pay for an organized campsite in order to have greater amenities and infrastructure. So what that study does state is that, yes, some of these campers north of town are going to dry camp no matter what. But it also says there's a lot of people that are forced to dry camp because they have no other options. And when I say we, I'm referring to the commercial campgrounds in town. We are sending campers on a daily basis to Klondike Bluffs, Dalton Wells, Willow Springs. We're sending them to Green River and Monticello, Blanding and Price to get full hookups for their RVs because Moab is full. Every time we send a camper to Boondock or to any of those towns, we're losing revenues and tax dollars. But guess what we're not losing? We're not losing their traffic and stress on our infrastructure because they are willing to drive an hour to get to Moab for the day. In essence, we get their visitation, but don't make a single dollar from it. This proposed development collects those tax dollars and revenues and puts them into our economy. Outside of the public lands being overwhelmed, there's proof in the county budget that we have a lack of organized camping. The Spanish Trail Arena is set up as an overflow camping facility in town. So when campgrounds are full, people can pay to dry camp at the arena. Now, I don't know if that makes the county have a conflict of interest in improving more overnight campgrounds, but I know the director of OSTA stated in December that he appreciated the business that the commercial camp park sent him when we were full. Probably one of the biggest, I'm almost done, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Probably one of the biggest negative points that I hear from people over the years is that we don't need any more accommodations. Or they say if we stop building them, they won't come. And these statements are just plain false when it comes to RVers and campers. They aren't going to cancel their trip their 3-week cross-country trip just because they can't find hookups for a couple of nights. They're going to come because they bring their accommodations with them. They park on the side of the road, in parking lots, in neighborhoods, wherever they can. And this creates problems for town and our public land agencies. Do we as locals take pride in seeing porta potties lined up on the Willow Springs Road? I think the answer to that is a unanimous no. Look, I brought this application back for many reasons, because I'm passionate about it, but I was also asked by commissioners to bring this back after the SRP plan was created. So I'm here now. I want to be a part of the solution. And as you gather these comments from the public, I just want you to weigh the quality of the developer, the quality of the development, and the need of the development. And, you know, we all have strong opinions about overnight accommodations, but I guarantee you, if you actually break down hotels versus RV campgrounds, they're a completely different thing. And they need to be treated as such, because you can build 1,000 more hotel rooms and you're still going to have people dumping their crap out there on the public lands. Thanks.
Thank you, Reed. Michael, are you on for public comment? Or just to listen?
No, I'm here. Thank you for your time. This is Michael with Namaste Rock. We are across the street. And anyway, with the Dalton Wells campground, the county was in work with, as I understand, with sovereign lands and the state parks to run a campground there. That was replaced when the state park was put there. And anyway, both of these contained campgrounds. And so the county wanted them with those. And I have a hard time seeing what the difference is between his campground that was proposed before and is still being proposed. And anyway, I fully support this campground. I feel that Namaste Rock, we're surrounded by 3 vacant buildings. And so this isn't an area that hasn't ever been used. This is an area that's been hit hard and has hit buildings that are vacant. And so anyway, we need something to help this area out. And so it would be fantastic if you supported the campground and alleviated some stress on all these boondockers and other things, and gave them some services and help protect the environment. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. My brother's here also. He owns a hideaway that's next door. He'd like to comment.
Yeah, so this is Christopher Scarda. I'm here representing Arches Hideaway, just to the south of Namaste Rock and also across the street from the proposed campground. And I want to also voice my support for this development. I feel like services in the area are badly needed. There simply are not enough services to support visitors, and we're not doing enough to accommodate people that are traveling to, especially to Dead Horse Point and the Canyonlands Visitor Center. It's not right that people should have to drive all the way down to Moab to get basic services. So I fully support this. I feel like this is needed. We certainly see a lot of campers in the area. There's a demand for it. And the people that visit our beautiful area here appreciate the value of it. And I really see a big asset to a development like this, because it's kept clean. It's not people that are leaving their trash behind. It's going to be maintained and well kept and respect the area. So please approve this application.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Reed, would you please send that survey that you quoted to the commission and to the planning department?
I actually don't have the survey. I think it was Tony Mancuso that did the FSL presentation at that meeting. You can view the YouTube
So
meeting.
Tony, I
from
just need to get, Tony was who I'd have to get a hold of.
Yeah,
Okay,
he's the
thank
one
you.
that stated it in his presentation about the Dalton Wells campground.
Okay, thank you. I can get a hold of him. Any others? This public hearing will remain open until Wednesday, September 29th. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm closing this portion of the public meeting at 6:53. Thank you. We don't have a closed session, but I do have a future consideration. We might be able to do it, but both Gabriel and I are going to be gone on the 5th of October. I just realized when I was looking at the time for that. Still, you could still have a quorum. We might be able to participate from Cedar City. But anyway, that's something to think about. Who, you know, if who would want to chair the meeting, or if we would want to postpone it. That's oftentimes too hard. We've done it in the past when both Curtis and he was chair and I was chair and he was vice chair. We postponed the commission meeting for a week. So that's a possibility as well. But anyway, put it in your thinking cap and we can communicate and decide what we want to do. There is no closed session, correct, Christina? Chris? We have reached the end of our agenda, so if no one objects, I will close this meeting of the Grand County Commission. Are there any objections? Meeting adjourned. Thank you for your hard work.